have a seat. Get back in the room. So if it doesn't make sense to you from the agenda, just to give you a little frame, obviously we had the panel this morning as I explained why we put those three folks together, why we wanted them to talk, leads into why we have all these folks up here from the community who have devices that they are have implanted or are using to restore function. Many of them from the Cleveland area, and so we wanted to have the opportunity for them to share their stories. And then if it also isn't clear from the agenda, following this whole panel and discussion will be presentations from the FDA and CMS, which is the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare. So I hopefully you can sort of see what we're trying to tease out and talk about and think about. Back to that idea of the translation wheel, where does this stuff exist? What's our relationship to it? What do we do about it, with it, for it, against it? That's the kind of stuff we're trying to think about and tease out. So I just want to make sure that's really clear. And now I want to introduce Kim Anderson to you from the Cleveland FES Center.
Thanks, you.
Kim.
All right. I know you're all worried that we're going to fall off stage as we maneuver around here, but believe me, we're experts. So today, can we go to the start of my presentation? Okay. So I'm only going to give a very brief introduction because I really want everybody here to be able to demonstrate their systems. And okay, so what you heard in the previous panel, you hear a lot of science, a lot of technical terms of, you worry about safety, you worry about efficacy. That's all very, very important and critical. But what you're going to hear today is a different perspective. And it is actually from the perspective of the people that, one, put themselves at risk to be part of these studies, and two, they really know what it means to have these devices. So we're going to have demonstrations from 8 different people, and they're going to talk to you about how they found out about their device, how long they've had it, and show you demonstrations of what it can do, and then talk to you about how it has impacted their lives. So everybody's going to have about 7 minutes to go through, and we're not going to take any questions in between. We're going to go through all the demonstrations first. And as each person goes, they're going to come off the stage, and we'll end up all gathered down here at the bottom. And then at the very end, we'll have time for questions. And I will introduce each person as we go, and we also have a representative from each system, each lab system, down in the front, and I'll introduce them to you. I tease them, they're just the eye candy. The real meat is up here on the stage. But the purpose of them being down here and the purpose of all of us is so that you can recognize faces. And you may not always remember names, but faces. And so during the rest of the conference, you can come up to anybody and ask questions about the different systems and anything specific to what you want to know. So Ian Burkhart is going to talk to us first about his brain-computer interface system that also has an external FES system. And if you'll notice on each slide, number one, the name of each person, but over in the right-hand corner will be a designation of whether it's a research device or a marketed device. And so Ian is in a research device system. And tell me as you want me to go forward in the slides.
Thanks. Thanks, Kim. So my name is Ian Burkhart. I'm a C5 quadriplegic. I had my injury a little over 9 years ago. Like pretty much everyone in this room, I wasn't settled with normal rehab, so I was looking for more, and that's how I found out about my research trial that I'm in. I kept bugging my doctors at Ohio State in Columbus. What can I look forward to? What can I do more? And that's when they shared to me a project they were working on in a collaboration with Battelle, which is a research and development company in Columbus. I use a brain-computer interface, which is developed by BlackRock Microsystems. It's on the motor cortex of my brain. to pick up actual individual neurons firing and the intent of movement for my hand. That all goes processed through a computer and series of algorithms, and then is translated back out into a muscle stimulation device that is worn on my forearm. Kind of not standard FES, but it's a high density FES that allows us to target individual muscle fiber segments, so we can get individual finger movement, flexion and extension, hand flexion extension, and be able to control a lot of that. It's something that I can only use in the lab, so I have a couple of videos here to show you about that, and we'll have Kim go to the next slide. So this shows just swiping a credit card through, and I mean, with my C5 injury, I could reach out and grab onto something, barely hold on to the paper, but the hardest thing about that is actually holding it with enough force to slide it quick enough through the reader so it actually registers. This was actually a task that I proposed to the research team because it was something that happened to me the day before. They asked me, okay, what are things that you want to work on? But it was really something that is challenging for me. Go ahead and go to the next one, Kim. Oh, okay.
Can you make sure that video starts? Go back with one slide, please. And then start the video. Okay.
Okay, so here's a standard functional task that we did that is a very basic everyday task, but it's picking up a bottle, pouring it out into a smaller jar, and then stirring that. And of course, we're using dice because engineers don't like water near their electronics. But that's all right. And you can see I'm able to combine a full hand open with a cylindrical grasp, and then switch over to a nice pinch grasp. And the system, this was a early on video, but it, doesn't work 100%, but it works a lot better than me on my own. And it allowed me to do that functional task. And right now, only being able to use it in the lab is limiting, but it shows the promise and hope for the future of something that I can do when I can hopefully translate that into something that I can take home.
You ready for the third video?
Yeah, go ahead, one more slide.
Okay.
Another kind of more flashier task that we were able to do and a little bit more fun was play Guitar Hero. Shows that we were able to get individual finger flexion, and also the speed of the system where it works quick enough that I wasn't booed off stage at the end of or in the middle of the song, even though that did happen a couple times. But it was really great because it shows that it's something a little bit more fun than moving blocks around on a table like a lot of standardized tasks for hand function. And also that individual finger flexion and extension is really critical and a nice thing that we were able to get out of our system. But one last thing I just want to add in is, the greatest thing is I was able to be a part of this study and get a lot out of it and show that it's possible, but there were some nice unintended benefits because I've been using the system for now 5 years. I've increased the coordination and muscle control over the muscles that I do have volitional control over in my shoulder. So now I'm able to reach out and grab onto things a little bit more. I can handle my phone, I can handle the microphone a lot easier. And that has translated to me actually moving out of my family's home onto my own. Still have assistance here and there, but it's much more independence for me, and that's really what's beneficial and what everyone here is hoping to get out of all of these devices is more independence. So it's really great that that's been an unintended benefit because I really thought, okay, the system's on when I'm in the lab, great, I can do all this stuff, and then I go home and can't do it anymore. But actually been able to use that as a rehabilitation tool.
And I would like David to stand up from Battelle, just so people recognize his face in case you want to ask questions later on after that. Okay, thank you, Ian. And we're going to go over to our next person. And let's let Ian go ahead and get off this stage and come down to the front. Excellent. Okay, our next presenter is Laszlo Nagy, and Laszlo has a diaphragm pacing system, and it is actually a marketed device by Synapse Biomedical. And Jeff Thompson, please stand up. He's a representative from Synapse Biomedical. And Laszlo, if you want to come forward just a little bit, that way people can see you more, and then you can go ahead and start talking.
So I'm demonstrating it right now. This is it. I breathe. And which of all things in life that become overrated, perhaps food or standing or whatsoever, breathing is definitely not overrated. I can assure you of that. And my injury is, so this device was implanted 16 years ago in June. And how I found out about it, my injury was in Chicago, and we moved back here because that's where all of our family was, and my son, who is now graduating from college, was still a little 4-year-old running around, and we needed help. And I met a doctor at Metro named Fred Frost, and he said that, there's this guy, and there's two of my team here, Tony DeMarco, and he can raise it. And he came up with this gizmo, it's exactly what he said, that might be able to help you breathe and get off the vent. So we got in touch with Dr. DeMarco, and we went to his office, and he said, we have to do a test. And we have to see if your phrenic nerve works, and I'll never forget this. We went into this fluoroscopic room where the machine was set up, and the doctor put on these long rubber gloves all the way up to their elbow and put this electrode to my neck and blasted me. And all I remember is saying, "Are you out of your mind? What the hell is wrong with you?" So they needed to see if my phrenic nerve worked, and it did. And then they explained that to install it should take a couple hours, and if it works, you're gonna breathe. If it doesn't, no harm, no foul. Well, I was on a ventilator, and back then, the ventilators were, as big as a small microwave. And then below my ventilator on my wheelchair, I had a car battery that was powering this thing. That's what they still were. And there weren't very many ramp vans that could actually lift me because the chair was so heavy, and we'd be going out and about, and the thing would start to alarm because the battery was dying, and we'd start looking for an outlet, and it was really traumatic. So the decision was very easy. And they installed it, and they turned it on, and we went through the protocol for 1 month at Metro's GCRC. And it just worked, and I never looked back. And speaking of independence, to get rid of that vent was just a remarkable thing. I could smell people don't realize that all these little things that go around through the breathing, and to be able to speak, to be able to travel. And then now I had my independence. And there was a doctor at a urologist. Maybe some of you remember him. His name was Graham Creasy. He was working with me, and he said, "What do you want someday? Maybe someday you'll have your name on a hospital." I said, "You know what? I'd rather just have it on a mailbox." So we have a mailbox that says Nagy in big letters right on the front of the house. And so now my son's graduating from college, and now I have a 10-year-old that's in 5th grade at university school. And it's really pretty remarkable what breathing can do when you could just breathe on your own. And Kim knows Kim Anderson. We met each other and here, there, and everywhere, and I've seen some of you at other conferences. But to be able to travel and to just even go visit your son in college is just really a remarkable thing to be able to do, just because of a simple little device like that keeps on working. And if there was one glitch, let's see, it was now 4 years ago, it started alarming, and we couldn't figure out what was going on. So Dr. Anders came to my house, and he thought it might be a kitchen table fix, and apparently it wasn't. One of the wires inside of me broke. So Jen, my wife, Jen Nagy, asked, "Well, how long does the wire last?" So we calculated out 10 years, 4 months, and 12 days. Because I was one of the first, and I think I'm still the only one that's around from the original protocol, because Christopher Reeve and the others are unfortunately no longer with us. So I'm happy to keep providing you all with data.
Thank you, Laszlo. Thank you. So let's give Laszlo some space to get down there and join the others. And then we'll go on to our next demonstrator. All toes inside. Okay. Let's see if this will go forward. All right. Our next presenter is David Powers, and he's going to talk to you about a cough system that he has implanted, and it is in a research setting. So go ahead, you can pull forward if you want to. And Chris Kowalski, please stand up. He is the face to ask questions for later.
My name is David Powers. I'm getting ready to turn 60 years old, and I decided to ride a dirt bike instead of my quad on 4th of July 2013, and ended up breaking my neck. I was originally diagnosed with a C2, C3, AJA incomplete, and since then, through therapy, I was upgraded to a C5, C7, and tetraplegic. And one day going through the hospital, I noticed a sign on the door that said FES program, and it was describing a diaphragm stimulator. So I decided to ask about it because At the time, my cough, my sneeze, or anything else was basically non-existent. I had a propensity to asphyxiate on anything I ate, drank, saliva, anything. So I got introduced to the good doctors here, and he implanted the device August 2 years ago. And before the device, I averaged 2 bouts per year of bacterial pneumonia. And since the device has been put in, I haven't had any type of pneumonia, and it's been 2 years, so I think it's doing pretty good. The quality of life has increased exponentially because you no longer have a fear of going out to eat, sitting in your room by yourself, or with an aide, or somebody who doesn't even know you. The device is very simple to operate. I can do it by myself if I need to. So that's basically where I'm at. And I would recommend it to anyone who has a respiratory disorder or difficulty breathing or coughing. You'd be surprised how much more you can do. The volume that I talk, how long I can talk without taking a breath, is grown quite a bit, and most people get tired of hearing me talk. So
Can you show us the device behind you?
Yep.
Yeah.
This is Robin. She's my assistant today, and she is holding my control device. And basically, she's going to set it on top of my implant. And she was asking me which setting of voltage I wanted to use, and I said 1. She said, "You're being a baby, so we're going to go up to 2.
Okay, let's see. I think so.
I think so. We'll find out.
No?
Call me off guard.
You don't even need a microphone there.
Don't do it again.
Okay.
Okay, you ready? Set it on.
All right.
And
Not too much. Wow. Wow.
to give you an example. Does it hurt you? No. It's basically pressure. I don't feel any pain or any sensation from 3/4 chest and down. But it's basically contraction, which I have with my spasms anyhow. It does not hurt. It's not really that uncomfortable. The benefit outweighs any of the negative things that could possibly go wrong. And without my little device being activated, I'll give you a demonstration of what I sound like without one.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see it does quite a bit.
Well, thank you very much. All right. We are going to, I'm going to let you come down on stage, and Maria, you're going to be our next person. But let me get switched over to your slide here in just a second. I'm actually going to come over to that side of the stage. Thank you. Just come down to the front. Okay. Maria is next. Maria needs the down here. Okay. All right, let me go to the next slide here. All right, Maria Suttor is going to demonstrate our next system, which is upper extremity. And you'll notice it's got different colors, like marketed and research. So on the far side is the freehand system that Dr. Peckham talked about earlier, and that was a marketed device. And in the middle is an IST-12 system, which you could call the second generation system, which is what Maria has, and she's going to talk about. And also, I'd like Ann Bryden to stand up, and she is part of the upper extremity lab, so if you have questions, you can ask her about that later. All right, Maria, go ahead.
So they had asked me if I wanted someone to hold the microphone, and I realized I have my hand implant, and I should hold it myself. So you can kind of see, when I don't have my implant on my hand, I have just passive tenodesis. When I have the implant engaged, which I use a flinch of my platysma muscle, and then cycle through the different programs, and then I can lock it in place. And now I don't need help with the microphone, so demonstration part 1, check. Again, my name is Maria. I was injured about 15 years ago. I was riding a bicycle and was rear-ended by a car. And I ended up with a C5 spinal cord injury. I was living in New York City at the time, but then moved back to the Cleveland area where my family is located, and just kind of started through the normal, inpatient rehab in New York, moved back here to do outpatient rehab. And while I was an inpatient in New York, my sister was going to school at Cleveland State and happened to have an advisor who knew about the upper extremity hand implant. So it was a little nugget of information that she stored away until I was back home, and was doing some traditional outpatient rehab and was starting to consider what the next step was. And after about a year of traditional outpatient therapy, I started to explore first tendon transfers at Metro, and then speaking with the upper extremity hand implant team. And by 2006, I had my tendon transfers, and by 2007, I had my first implant. And I did say first because I became the person who commonly heard Dr. Keith say, that hasn't happened in 25 years. You're the first that's happened to. And one of those first was unfortunately that the stimulator that I had up in my chest kept shifting. And it kept shifting because I was using my implant too strenuously. So after it shifted a couple times, they removed it, and there was a little hiatus, but during that hiatus, I never thought about not getting my implant put back in. And in 2011, they re-implanted the stimulator connected to the existing electrodes, and I haven't looked back since. All the while along the way, since 2007 to now, as with everyone, your life kind of changes as you go along. And luckily for me, my implant stimulator has kind of helped me through a lot of those changes. When I first got the device, I was going to grad school, so I no longer had to sit in lectures and rely on other people's notes. I could sit in lectures and take my own notes, holding my pen and writing. And then when my mom got diagnosed with ALS, I was able to help, adjust her blankets and wipe her mouth and adjust her pillows. And then I also began being able to use my implant to do more active movements. So one of the things, I had a cousin who was big into tennis, and she was convinced that we could play tennis together. So she got me a racket, and one of the things that I did that was one of my little statistics was, at the time, I had the strongest palmar grasp. So, I don't know, do I still? Oh, yes, excellent. Okay. And it really facilitated me to be able to hold a racket. I think probably at some point in everyone's life you had to do a tennis section in gym, and so you know what it takes to hold the racket, swing it, and hit the ball with some force. So first I was able to do it with my cousin, and then when I got my service dog, who, in case people are wondering, Bronson is still with me. He has just retired himself. So he refuses to come out of the house. So when I would demonstrate tennis before, it was way more interesting because Bronson would run around and shag the balls, but I will happily demonstrate hitting the tennis balls after the session, like somewhere where it's safe and I'm not gonna, break wine glasses. But I can show you how I hold it and swing right now. Yeah, let me unlock it first. So they have about 5 different hand grasp patterns set up, and I have to cycle through them to get to whichever one I need at the time, and sometimes that takes longer than you ever wanted to take, but spinal cord injury is a life of patience if you don't know. It really, you either have to get it or you have to hope everybody else around you has it. I'm able to hold and swing, and most of the time the racket doesn't go flying, and hit tennis balls around. I don't know. I can give it a try right here.
Yes.
All right. I think we should go this way. I'll move over here. Let me try to get this in my hand a little bit better. No. I'm going to go there and you go there. Oh, so. Yeah. Sometimes I do like to do a cross-body slice, so. It's a little low. Hold on a second. Okay.
Excellent. Yeah. Hey.
Sure. I think we're good.
All right. Thank you, Maria. So our next demonstrator is Jason, and he actually can't really demonstrate his system because you guys might not like it, but he's got a bladder system. So You will see, if you can make sure that that video is running there while Jason is talking. Jason has a bladder system, and it is a marketed device. Unfortunately, it's only available over in Europe and the UK right now, but there is work to try to see if it can come back to the US. He has the Vocare system, and you'll see in the video that is a picture of a bladder, and when the dark liquid is coming out, that's when the system is being turned on and off. When it's flowing, it's on. When it's stopped flowing, that's when it's turned off. All right, Jason, please take it away.
Hi, my name is Jason. I have the bladder system for about 13, 14 years. I was a gunshot victim about 20 years ago. And the reason I got the bladder system, I was having a lot of UTIs. So one day I was real sick and I had to go in the hospital. And I was there for my third day, getting ready to go home. And I just looked on the wall and it had just a picture of the system. So I asked about it. And they introduced me to Dr. Creasy. So I talked to Dr. Creasy and they did my blood work. And he said I was eligible to get the system. Got the system, and for a while I had to get used to it because it's an implant inside your body, and also it's an outside system. So you had to get used to being on your body and having how the system contracts your legs to make you understand when you're going to the bathroom in different times like that. So getting used to the system became great because I went from UTIs like 3 to 4 times a month, or sometimes more than that, to no UTIs at all. Since I had the system, I had 6 UTIs in 13 years. So it cut down a lot and it helped me a lot. And it also gives you more confidence when you want to do stuff, like go places, because you don't have to worry about having a cab and know what time, or then if you have doing too much, you do forget the cab, you have an accident, so it's like your time is cut, so it's time to go home. So that's another thing that helps a lot. And the good benefit with having it is, like I say, no UTIs and more control of your life and what you can do and what you understand how to train your bladder with the system. Where I say train your bladder, where you wouldn't have to go as often. Instead of going 4 to 5 times a day with the catheter, you can cut it down where you can go 3 times a day, or maybe 4 times a day. It depends on how much you drink that day, how much you consume, or like what you're doing that day. If you like out somewhere and you know you're gonna be going for a while, you can manage how much you drink, where you wouldn't have to go for maybe 6 hours. And then, you know, when you do go, you're not really messing up your bladder because you're training your bladder to how your body gonna go for that day. So that's a very big benefit that I learned from it for having it. And it runs with 9-volt batteries, so it can get expensive because them batteries are very expensive. But like I said, I had it system for 13 years. I've changed the battery 3 times in 13 years. So the rechargeable is excellent. It's excellent. That's all I can say. And it's a system that it changed lives. Like if it needed to be back in the United States, because I didn't know it was gone, but it really needs to be back in the United States because it can help everybody. If you can get it, I would say get it, because you will see how much it will benefit you from day one from having it. It'll be painful getting used to it, because like I say, it's something inside your body, so good 2 or 3 months, be ready for some pain. But in the long run, it'll be real worth it. Like I wish I could demonstrate, but I can't demonstrate that right now. But how would you know it's working good? It's like it's hooked up to, it's called a rhinostomy, where they'll take, like, go into your nerves and they put wires on your nerves, and each wire will help you know something, like for your bowel. You'll get like a 45-minute spasm in your leg, so your leg will be straight, but I'm not 45 minutes, 45-second burst, and it's just like real strong burst in your leg. That's how you know it's working real good. And then just like for your urine, it's a quick 3 to 5 second burst where your leg go back and forth, where you know you're emptying your bladder and things like that. But it's worth it. You get tired of your leg spasm all the time and stuff like that, but it helps a lot. It helps a lot.
Thank you. And actually, Dennis, stand up as well. I want you to. Dennis Barbeau is here in Cleveland, and he's working on the bladder systems as well. All right. Now, our next presenter is Lynn Wolf, and she has the E-stand system, or she's in the E-stand research study that Dr. Darrow spoke about earlier, and Dr. Darrow's over here. And we'll go ahead and let Lynn get started.
Okay, hi. 9.5 years ago, I was on spring break vacation in Flagstaff, Arizona, downhill skiing. I hit a tree. Whoops. I shattered my skull and broke my back and a lot of other things too. And so I have a T4-5 spinal cord injury. When I was in rehab, since I had both a brain and spinal cord injury, I was in rehab for 1.5 years. My mom looked into the Louisville study with Dr. Harkema, but because I have a traumatic brain injury, I did not qualify for her study. So I'm pretty sure she's the one who introduced me to the E-stand trial, and I applied online. I heard back really quick, and the thing that took the longest before I got the implant was waiting for the University of Minnesota Hospital to give Dr. Darrow my MRI. As soon as he got that, about 2 months later, I had the implant put in. That was at the end of May of last year. In terms of movement, I have regained voluntary movement of my legs with the stimulator off, and I get great movement with it on, but those aren't the best parts of having the stimulator. I have regained the ability to sweat below my injury level, so my chest, legs, and butt sweat, so my chance of overheating in the summer has greatly diminished, which I truly appreciate because I can go and spend time on the beach and not have to worry that I'm gonna overheat like that. I do still get cold pretty easily, but I also have better blood pressure control. I rarely get times where I feel lightheaded throughout the day. I have very few bowel accidents. They are few and far between, and I used to get maybe 1 or 2 a month. So there are 12 programs for movements and then 3 for autonomic, and those autonomic ones I have on every night, and so we've seen the changes. I did do the tilt table test with Dr. K from Canada, and it's so much fun. No coffee, no blood pressure pills, and they strap you in and tilt you up and watch your blood pressure fall, and then they turn on the stimulator with the autonomic function that works best, and all of a sudden I can stream off the 7 numbers that they tell me to do, and I can pass the thinking tests because I have better blood pressure control. It's hard for me to be able to show you guys that, but I can show you the movement that I have. I do have the device on right now. And up and down. Like, I have better kicking with my right leg and better knee to chest movement with my left, but I had absolutely no movement before the study. So, and you guys, a lot of those videos that you saw when Dr. Darrow was presenting, the ones in shorts with compression stockings, those were my legs.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Jen, are you going to come up down here? Our next presenter is Jennifer French, and she has a research system for the lower extremity function. And Lisa Lombardo, if you just wave your crutches around, she's representative of the lab team that's been working with Jen for many years now. And go ahead, Jen.
So it's pretty funny, my PT has crutches, right? So we gotta love that. Jen French here, C6, C7 spinal cord injury from a snowboarding accident. I was injured 21 years ago. I was implanted 20 years ago with the first system. No worries. We don't want any casualties in these demonstrations. Excellent. So I was injured snowboarding and found the FES Center here in Cleveland. And interesting how I found it, I was appealing my insurance company for more treatments for using an FES cycle. So I went to these guys and said, hey, what research can help me make my case to the insurance company? And they said, hey, we have research projects too. All right. So I joined the stand and transfer system. So what is the stand and transfer system? So I started out with an 8-channel system. I only had 8 channels in me that allowed me to stand for years. And then over the years, it's upgraded. I'm now up to 24 channels. That means I have 24 electrodes implanted in my body, no wires protruding from the skin. And I have a very similar implant or controller that's inside the body. Both of them are in my abdomen. All of that is encapsulated inside the body. So, and then they have an external control device. So this is not a bomb I'm wearing around my waist. Sometimes I have to watch when I go through airports, but no, this is not a bomb. This is actually the external control device. So it has all the batteries and the intelligence that sits outside of the body. And how does it work? So I just taped a coil that looks like this to the skin over the implant. And then I connect that coil to this external box. And then that's how I actually control the system. So I think I can talk loud enough, right? I think I can. Occasionally. So what the system does is it sends, when I put in a control, it will send a signal through the implant to the electrodes, and the electrodes will turn on and actually have the function. So you can see I'm a C6, C7. I don't have very good trunk control. But before I go ahead and stand, I can actually turn on my back electrodes and sit up a lot more straight than I normally would. So I can turn that off. And again, I'm sitting just normally without trunk control. So I see all you able-bodied people are sitting up straighter. This is really funny. So to be able to stand is actually
use the mic, Jen, so everyone in the back can hear.
Okay. And there you go. So to actually make it work, I go ahead and put an input in. 3 seconds later, it'll turn on the stimulation, and then I'll be able to stand. Spasm, of course. So here I'm standing, using my own muscles and the electrodes. 95% of my weight is actually on my body and using it. I'm just using this walker for balance. And so really the system wasn't designed to replace the wheelchair. It was designed to allow you to stand and do functional movements, reaching, going through the narrow doorways, etc. But it was also made for transfers, like transferring onto high hotel beds. Use that a lot, huh? So really, you're able to move short distances and be able to transfer, and be able to transfer back. And then to turn it off, it's just like flipping a switch. Go ahead and turn it off. But while I'm standing here, I do have to say there's a lot of other functions that are within this system. And one of the key things of being a research participant is to be able to work with the researchers to identify what are the important functions for us. That's why it's so important for research participants to be vocal and to be able to take the input to the researchers. That's our role in research. But I have other functions that go along with this. I can go on about all the functions, like I have an Amazon function to pick up the Amazon boxes off my front porch, or I have foot tapping to tell my husband he's running late. But the more important thing are the social aspects. So I can take this thing anywhere. I can go stand at a seventh inning stretch of a baseball game. I can go stand and hang out at a carousel bar in New Orleans. But, and I can walk down the aisle at my wedding. I mean, those are the important things. Those are the social aspects we don't always look at when we look at systems. Those are the important things to us, right? We could take them out into the world. But there's also an aspect of this that's medical, that I've seen over the years. I have really good circulation. I have bone density that's equivalent to an able-bodied person. So all of those medical facts has a huge difference on our lives. Go ahead and sit. So now I'm going to hand it off to Kim.
All right. So I am going to be the final demonstration here, and then we'll be able to have everybody ask questions. And while my multitude of assistants are coming up onto the stage, I'll let you know that I have a research device. It is a multifunction system, and I actually heard about it several years ago because I know Hunter through the research world, and I told him, I said, I don't want any external parts, and I said, I want more than one function, so I'll just wait until you're ready for that. And so I did wait. I waited, and about 2 years ago, I had my implant. And so if you can see in on the far right hand side of where you're looking is the components that are implanted into me. And actually on the left-hand side is the diagram of what's actually in me. So I've got the electrodes, the leads going to the different muscles. So I've got my right arm implanted. And then I also have 2 muscles on both sides of my back. I have my glutes and I have my quads and my 2 muscles in my legs that pull my knees together. And so I'm not going to demonstrate any of the hand functions because Maria did that very well, but I do use the hand system every single day. But what I'm going to do is demonstrate a function that not only impacts me, it also impacts my husband, Tim, and any of my caregivers. So that's going to be a stimulated transfer. And actually, only 2 or 3 of the research team has actually ever seen this. And so you guys are going to get to witness this as well. And actually, I would not have ever attempted to transfer to this kind of a chair without my device. That would just be a big red warning sign of an accident waiting to happen. But with the device, I will try to narrate as we go along, but I'm going to be turning on my trunk system so I get rigidity in my core. And then I'm going to use my hand, my wrist right here, to trigger both of my quads, and so I get knee extension. And what that is going to enable is the force of my knees trying to extend is actually going to translate into my feet. And that is going to help push me up out of the chair, and it's going to help Tim with extremely large reduction in the amount of weight that he is going to have to bear. All right, so let's get set up here, and I'm going to, are you going to do the chair? Or, okay, Anne is going to hold the chair here steady, and Lisa, if you come over on this side. I can operate the device with my wrist or with my cell phone here, adaption, and go ahead and do the seatbelt. For this particular program, I'm going to use both the cell phone to trigger it, or actually Tim's going to use the cell phone to trigger it, and then I'm going to use my wrist to do the second component. All right, and are you ready? Okay, so I know not everybody will be able to see, but as you, you'll be able to hear me. So watch for my trunk to stiffen. I'll actually get a little bit taller because I have really bad trunk control. And then when I say, you'll hear me say 1, 2, 3, Tim and I are going to coordinate, and we're going to transfer it over to here. And when he gives you that, you just take that. Okay.
I just have to take it, right?
Yep. Okay, my trunk just came on. One, 2, 3. And then I just let go of my wrist, and everything turns back off. Now, I'm not going to stay in this chair. We're going to go back over to the other chair, and then I'll finish up the demonstration. And this is, going backwards is going to be a little bit more difficult because this chair that I'm in is lower than my wheelchair. So he's going to turn this on, and then he'll give it back to you. There's my trunk.
Okay.
1, 2, 3. All right, and then everything just turned off. So, if everyone who's ever transferred themselves or had to be transferred by someone else, you'll obviously know you lead with your head and the rest of your body is dragging behind because you're like a big piece of elastic. Well, one of the best ways that I can get Tim to describe how it feels is like I don't feel stretchy anymore. So my core is solid for him. And then the other big thing is that he doesn't really have to lift hardly at all. He is just guiding me. And so that's a big impact on him and what the technology can do for the people that are in your lives. That's okay for now. And for me, it's a big impact because even though I am not independent in my transfer, I am actually helping now. And I'm contributing to my ability to take care of myself in the long run and to also take care of my husband in the long run as we age with spinal cord injury, and it gets harder and harder and harder. And so for me, even though I am actually only one of 5 people, because it's an early feasibility trial that this is, and so very early in the technology for this particular device, and it's worth whatever experimental things that I need to go through, because I know the basics of it are safe, and the end result has got a huge impact on me and my future and on my husband. So I'm going to end right there, and I'll come down to this floor area, and we can open up for questions. And Matthew is going to have the microphone. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you all. So we've got some time for questions. I would ask you to, there may be lots of questions. Obviously, there's lots of folks to ask those questions to, so try to be brief with your questions. And also wait for microphone. You can see there's a couple of people in the room who have them. Claudia? Johnny? Hang on and wait till you have the microphone so everyone can hear.
Hi, I'm Claudia from New Orleans, and I wondered, Jason, where's Jason? I can't see him. Okay. Had you considered Botox injections in your bladder prior to having your implant?
No, I didn't.
Okay. That's simple enough.
They didn't invent Botox until about 3 years ago legally, so we wouldn't have had the option.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, I'm Margot from Mayo Clinic. My question is for Jennifer. When you first were implanted, were you able to stand as long as you are today? And do you fatigue? And how has your kind of development of the skill happened over the years?
Yeah, so fatigue is a great question, right? So The one thing about FES systems is that it's not immediate, and I think we know about that both with spinal cord stimulation and with implanted peripheral nerve stimulation. It takes a while to build up your body. So for this protocol, I had 2 months of exercise before I did my first stand, and I think the longest I stood was 2 hours, but we started to cut off the research at about an hour because we all got really bored. So yeah, we use it for for long periods of time. Do I see it fatigue? Yeah, actually, Lisa just told me the other day I'm overusing my muscles, so I'm fatiguing them because I've been biking a lot lately and weightlifting. So yeah, does fatigue happen? Well, fatigue happens for an able-bodied person, right? So it happens for us as well. But it does take a while to build up your endurance. Nobody's going to go out and run a marathon right away. You have to train for it. And is this kind of the same theory behind that?
Christy?
Hello, I'm Christy from the Cleveland VA Spinal Cord Injury Center. My question is for Lynn. Lynn, you mentioned you had problems with low blood pressures, but I was wondering whether you had autonomic dysreflexia before your implant, and if so, if it had changed afterwards.
I've only ever had AD once, and that was when I got spontaneous peritonitis. So it's like an infection of the casing around your intestines, and my body kind of freaked out, and really high blood pressure. I got to take a nice ambulance ride to the hospital, but that is the only time I've ever had it. So, because I know I'm right at like that borderline. So AD was never a huge issue for me.
Hi, my name's Taryn. I'm from Spinal Cord Injury, Alberta. I'm wondering if a part of your participation in the research trials included any kind of measurement of emotional well-being.
Really good question. I'm a huge advocate for that. Some of the studies I know that have been going on for a while, usually they publish things like quality of life. So you go through these quality of life questionnaires, and I think there's probably several of us up here who have taken that. But when you look at psychological well-being, that's a really important question. And as an advocate, I have to say that I'm also concerned about that, not only for long term, but what happens when the research ends, and what happens when, for instance, it fails. Because we all know for the phones that we carry around, those fail as well. So there's really a psychological impact on that, and I think that is an area that still needs to be studied.
Every month when I went in for muscle testing, I had a bunch of surveys to fill out, and quality of life was part of them. I had to talk about support from friends, how I felt safe at home, how I felt based, how proud I was, and how accomplished I felt with the way things were going with my legs, and even things about did I have enough money to meet my needs. It was a great questionnaire every month. So they did track that in my study.
I have a question. Directed maybe best to you, Jen. You described earlier, you made a joke, I don't have a bomb around my waist. You have this big box. Now I know you've been in the study a long time, but a lot of us use things like this. Why isn't that possible to have connected to a device like this? Or are newer iterations of that connected to a device like this? And then the second part of my question is, how long have you been in this study? And if, given what we saw, how it works and it functions, why is it still a study? And why isn't it applicable?
Oh, great question, Matthew. So I'm going to address your second question, then I'm going to hand the microphone over to Lisa to answer your first question. So the second question is, how come it hasn't translated out? So contrary to what was said earlier, I don't think translation is just money. Elon Musk is throwing a lot of money around right now, and so is Facebook, but they haven't solved the problem yet. So it's not money. There's a lot more that goes along with it. It's building the right teams, it's taking the right technology, building it through the systems, gaining reimbursement, and also finding a commercial partner and investors to make that happen. So it's much more in terms of for translation. And yes, to Corinne's point earlier, translation is slow. And we can be advocates to help with that, but translation out into the marketplace is slow. So this is a very early version. It was implanted 20 years ago. It's changed over the years, obviously. But what Kim just demonstrated is the next generation. That's where we're going, taking this box and moving it into a cell phone to be able to operate. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Lisa to answer the question, why does it look like a Radio Shack box and it's not a smartphone?
So the answer to that is money. So if you look at miniaturizing that box, it does cost money, and that does not answer a research question. If you ask the question, why can't that box be smaller? We all know the answer. It can be, and it should be, but nobody's going to fund that research because we already know the answer to that question, so it doesn't really prove anything. So really, in order to make that smaller, it would have to be commercialized, and we would have to have a commercial partner that was willing to put forth the money to make that smaller. And to go along with what Jen said about commercialization and why is this not available, across the country, across the world, we've proven that the technology works, but we all think that the world of spinal cord injury is huge because it's part of our everyday things that we do on a daily basis, but it's actually a very small population of people. So one of the things that we are trying to do is we're trying to expand the technology to other injuries and other disabilities. So we are working on an implant for individuals with stroke. We're working on an implant for individuals with spinal cord injury, multiple sclerosis, so that this technology can be expanded to multiple different individuals and not just spinal cord injury. It could be used for anybody with paralysis.
So is it, just so it's clear, I would assume that means the reason why you haven't found a commercial partner is related to what you just said. You want to expand the conditions for which it.
Right, a commercial partner would, they would want to see that their investment was going to be
hit
productive.
a larger market.
Right, a larger
Okay.
market, so.
Okay.
Megan Moynihan from the Institute for Functional Restoration. So the model that we're trying to establish with the IFR is to work to develop a commercial pathway for neuroprosthetics. And the main way that we're trying to do it is to de-risk it further through the process to attract industry partners. In other words, instead of just showing that you have a prototype that works and then hoping that an industry partner will come and take that through the commercialization track, we're trying to take these technologies further and further into clinical trials, potentially even starting or even completing a pivotal clinical trial in order to de-risk the enterprise for an industry partner.
Okay. John, and then you.
Hi, my name is Brianna. I'm just kind of following up with what somebody else had a question about the quality of life and well-being. I'm a doctoral student, and I'm currently doing a scoping review on the transition of self-identity after spinal cord injury. So I was just wondering if that was included in any of the research that you guys were involved in, kind of seeing how you saw yourself being paralyzed versus what you're able to do now and how that has changed your own identity.
Well, when it first happened to me, it changed me where I say, honestly, I was in the hospital for 2 months. First month I was like sad going through it. But then once you start talking to everybody, hearing everybody's story, you kind of, me, I can't speak for everybody. Me personally, what I did was I heard everybody's story.
I had to go through a process where I lamented the life that I thought I had planned for me, because everything changed on March 15th, 2010. Like, I was a doctoral student as well, and then I kind of got hurt, and a year and a half later, I went back to grad school, and I finished my master's instead of a PhD, and currently I'm looking to go back and finish, but I got to a point where I went into this study thinking if nothing changes, nothing changes. I was happy with my life then. I'm just happier now that I have better bowel control and blood pressure, and the moving is fun, but that's not the best part of all of this.
In the study that I'm involved in, it's a little bit different because it's something that was only used in the lab. So going into it, I knew I was compartmentalizing myself of what I can do in the lab and what I can do at home. Some of that did translate over, like I mentioned before, as far as some improved coordination. But at the same time, then there's an end date on the study. And does that mean that you're going to have all these capabilities taken away from you, or when the device fails, when you stop using it, is that going to be like having another spinal cord injury all over again, where you have to readjust to a whole new change in your life again? So it really is a big question to ask, something that does need to be taken into consideration with a lot of these trials, because like Jen mentioned earlier, what happens when these devices end, or when the study's over, or when funding runs out? The study that I'm in right now is kind of in limbo right now because of funding issues, and it is challenging because it has weighed on me psychologically and mentally as far as, well, what am I going to do to continue? And am I even going to keep the device if I can't use it, or do I get explanted and not have the device anymore? So there's a lot that goes into that, and it definitely needs to be considered in other studies.
Hi, I'm Heather from Walk It Off Recovery. This question is for Jason. I'm curious to know about the condition of your bladder. Like, it obviously would contract your detrusor muscle or your bladder muscle, but how about your sphincter? Is there any control of that? Do you wear a condom catheter all the time? Do you urinate into, do you have to wear a condom catheter, or can you urinate into a urinal? And so your bladder control, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, no, like with me personally, like going through like all the UTIs I was having, so I was like used to having a urinal by me, just catching and stuff like that. But once I did get it, no, not really. Like once you go, it empties your bladder like completely. It's empty and stuff. And then once you change your like get your bladder together, and you'll find yourself drinking more and more. Like you will go, like you say, I go 2 hours. I drink a lot 2 hours. Mm-hmm. I go and empty my bladder, and then I may go another 4 hours, and it's just like it won't be that much in there, because then your body will get used to filtering it, like your kidney gets used to filtering it like less and less, and then it just go on and on. But the limit I would say is 6 hours. Okay. After that, don't try to go no further. But your bladder will get used to it, and then your body get used to it, then your mind will get used to it, where you would know where, okay, I had 5 bottles of water a day. I think I need to go to the bathroom the next 10, 20 minutes.
So there's no leakage in between for you anyways? Okay.
No, you have no leakage at all.
Okay.
None.
Hi, I'm back here. So I'm Jerry from Case Western. I have another bladder question. I was surprised to hear that the Vocare system is not available in the United States. Can somebody explain why?
So the Vocare system is the FineTech, the Brindley FineTech system that was marketed in Europe. And when Neurocontrol was in business, they were the U.S. distributor of that system. And so while Neurocontrol was on the market, you could get both the Vocare, they renamed it the Vocare system. You could get the Vocare system and the Freehand system. They decided to move their attention into larger markets like stroke and turn away from spinal cord injury. And when they did that, they went out of business. And so because of that, there's no longer a U.S. distributor for the Brindley FineTech system here in the U.S. And that's really the only reason why we don't have it on the market here.
Brianna? Wait.
So, assuming some of you guys don't have intact sensation or have limited sensation, how would something like sensory restoration through these artificial stimulation parameters kind of affect your life? And if all you guys have intact sensation, let me know, then I have another question.
Good question about sensation, or what we call proprioception, so you know where your body is in space. I'm fortunate enough, I'm an Asia B, so I do have sensation below my injury, but no movement. So it really helps me. I know how it helps. It helps me know where my feet are when I'm transferring. It helps me to know, I can feel when my muscles start to fatigue. So sensation can play a really big role in that. But I know Lisa can probably comment to those that are in the study that don't have sensation and how it impacts them.
So we haven't seen any changes in sensation by stimulating. Our group is actually working on sensation, but we started with the amputee population. So we use basically the same technology that Jen has implanted, and we put a cuff electrode on the sciatic nerve, and we're stimulating those at much lower currents. We're not contracting their muscles, but we're stimulating them at a low current, and they can actually feel a heel that they don't have anymore. So that's the beginning of our sensory work, and we have talked about expanding that into the spinal cord injury, but we haven't done anything at this point yet.
When I have my autonomic settings on, one of them in particular, like if I'm taking a shower, I can feel if the water on my legs is hot or cold, and that is not something I had before. I have a bunch of little scars from burns on my legs to prove it, but I haven't regained that with the stimulator off, but with it on with a certain setting, I have temperature sensation, whereas before I could only ever feel if you hit me in my legs. I've always had pressure sensation, but now I can feel temperature.
One last question, and then we're going to stop for lunch.
Hi, I'm Tracy here. I was wondering either with, I guess, any of the different stimulators, if anyone had seen an impact on neuropathic pain at all, good or bad? Hopefully good.
I have a little more, but it's well controlled with a slightly higher dose of gabapentin. Like I would get more tingling in my feet and shins, but it never went like past my knees. So, but it's well controlled.
Well, I'm a very thin person, so I can feel like the electrodes in my coming from my spine, like wrapped around here. If I tilt a certain way, I can feel them. That's one reason why I can feel it, because I think because I'm very skinny.
Regarding pain, okay, I have to do my advocacy hat on my head. So pain is a real issue that hasn't really been addressed in terms of spinal cord injury. I know there's a lot of people out there dealing with neuropathic pain. And a lot of the spinal cord stimulators in the past really never dealt with neuropathic pain. But there are a lot of devices that are coming on the market for chronic pain for people that have neuropathic pain, but not specifically for spinal cord injury. So we have on Neurotech Network's website, we have a database and a resource specifically for pain management and looking at neuropathic pain to help educate, which actually goes to the International Neuromodulation Society and those types of devices that are being developed around the world.
Okay. Well, thanks, everybody. Thank you, especially to you folks who are willing to come and talk about your stuff, your stories, your experiences in these, with these devices. Thank you very much. I want to... A couple things regarding the agenda. We are a little behind, but as I said, we have some space to catch up with the loss of Jessica Kwok later today, so we'll make that up. We will break for lunch. Lunch will be served here in this room shortly. And then if you look through the agenda again, just to understand the sort of where we're going, we have FDA and CMS to follow lunch. I think that's obvious to have Vivek, thank you for being here, to talk about how does the process work at FDA for devices to be approved for spinal cord injury and for the marketplace. How does that work? And then CMS, how does that get paid for? And so we wanted to have that conversation in response to all of this morning talk about spinal stimulation and about devices for restoring function. Then we're going to pivot, and then we're going to focus a little more on strategies for regrowth or regeneration, however you'd like to think of those terms, and various strategies in that area, which we'll end with today and then pick up again tomorrow morning. And then really from there, we'll pivot into strategies for how we can work together around all of these things. And I wanted to mention that very specifically related to the questions about marketplace and about industry, because we really wanted to set up tomorrow afternoon a conversation with representatives from each of those corners of spinal cord injury. And what does everybody have to say about what do we do? How do we move things forward? How do each of you define a victory or a win or a success? And how can we work together to find ways to do that? So just a little quick frame to picture that. Again, make sure you stop and say hello to sponsors. We also have a couple of tables in the corner for the North American SCI Consortium and Untitled Paralysis, where Jake and Sam, our SAB director and Cure Advocacy Network, please talk to them about even some of these things. I think it'd be really important. Thank you for your patience, and we'll have lunch, and then we'll get back on track.